John Thompson sitting next to Kevin Kugler and Clark Kellogg to call tonight's national championship game on Westwood 1 as he did the Final Four over the weekend. And John Thompson calling us in right here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Coach?
Good, Rich. Very good. Still excited about this tournament. It's amazing to me, all of the games.
Yeah, it has been something else, and I do want to get to the type of play that we have seen so far, but I do want to get to that very play first off. Your first blush reaction was what a lot of people in America were thinking, which was, oh, my God, can't believe the ref didn't swallow his whistle right there. Do you think that was, in fact, a worthy-to-call foul at the end of that game?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I didn't think so because, as you know, Rich, during the course of a game, there's several calls that are called common sense calls. You know, that wasn't the first call that they would have been in position to say it didn't. The shot had been taken. The young man was fouled on his way down, not on his way up. You know, he had released the ball, you know, but it just, the thing that bothered me most, and you'll remember back when Fred Brown threw the ball away when we were playing against North Carolina. Okay. You worry about the well-being of the player afterwards. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, my God, that kid's got to live with that for the rest of his life. And you got three officials out on the floor who don't call double dribbling, you know, but yet in the same token, they get religious about that call.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about Jerome dribbling the ball off his right leg and then collecting it again and picking it up and dribbling one more time. There was no call on that front right there. But there was contact in this moment in a similar way that there was with Carson Williams of Purdue against Tennessee earlier on. At least, is there any solace that there's been some consistency in terms of a call like this?
Not with me, there's no solace. You know what I mean? I think they're two different ball games. And I think that the officials are three people out there. I don't know what the solution is, but I don't think events of that significance should be determined by officials unless it's a blatant. There's something that relates to common sense calling, too. Officials don't call every foul, every violation in a ball game. You don't sit down and predetermine that which ones you don't and you do. But there's got to be something that when you look at the situations in the major events that we've had in sports, that we're not discussing officiating, we're discussing the play. If it were something of a concern, why would we be discussing officiating and not the play itself?
Well, so you think Auburn should be playing tonight then, John?
Well, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that because I'm not going to take anything away from anybody else out there. I'm more concerned with the fact that the officiating, both of those teams play hard. All the teams that are in this thing have played hard. My point is that the officiating shouldn't be the one that makes the determination. The team should.
John Thompson, who's calling the game on Westwood 1 here on the Rich Eisen Show, calling that game between Virginia and Texas Tech tonight. I mentioned at the top of my broadcast that this is just the second time that both Final Four winners scored fewer than 65 points. The last time that happened is when Georgetown and Houston took on each other in your national championship year of 1984. Why do you think in this age of three-point shooting that we're seeing such tight ball games, tight defense here, Coach?
Well, I think it is defense. You hit it right on the head. And a lot of it has to do with the tempo that the team wants to play. I think when you get involved in championship play, people become more cautious. I think also when you look at teams playing defense the way that they do, you know, that the game is not a game that we call in the business a long game. The game is shortened sometimes by the offense in the game. I think the most significant thing is the percentage that teams shoot more so than the score of the game.
So, yeah, as I just find it interesting that do we see here, do you think that teams that lionize the three, that focus their game on taking the three, trying to outscore the opponent, that we're maybe seeing some sort of a watershed moment in college basketball with this Final Four, with this national championship game?
I don't know what the hell you're talking about, to tell you the truth.
Well, I'm just saying that so many teams like shooting the three so much. We're seeing it so much in the NBA, where we're seeing everybody take threes as opposed to twos. We're seeing teams that are focusing more on an offense that has motion in it. Now we're seeing two defensive teams just lock it down, like Texas Tech and Virginia.
Well, you're absolutely correct. And I think it relates to the fact we've made people think that being in the paint is boring. The post-up guy is boring. Cutting through the middle is boring, and those kinds of things. And you can see basketball all over the place at both levels where people are relying on the three. I think Curry has had a lot to do with that because his phenomenal shooting outside. But when you start to play against a team, particularly like Texas Tech and even Auburn is a very good perimeter defensive player, it creates a problem if you're not hitting, if you're not making those shots. But, I think it's exciting, when you see guys that are making the threes. But, if you're not making them, what happens is what has happened.
Matt Mooney's a guy that made the threes for Texas Tech, Coach John Thompson here on the Rich Eisen Show against Michigan State. And he is a graduate transfer from South Dakota. Owens as well on Texas Tech is a graduate transfer on Texas Tech. So
Owens has been every school in the nation.
It seems it does seem that way. Where I was going with the question is the NCAA is considering passing a rule that would cost a team 2 scholarships to sign a player like this, and some folks think that would be too punitive for kids like Mooney to transfer and have a moment like this. Where do you stand on that subject, Coach?
Well, I haven't given a lot of thought, but I don't agree with that. I don't agree with the fact that because kids are transferring, you obviously have permitted them to do it by the existing rules. And then it gets to a point where you start to try to determine that somebody's gaining an advantage. Certain schools will not let you do that, in terms of their individual admission standards, in doing it. But I don't know. I haven't given it that kind of thought. But right off the top, Rich, I would not agree with that one bit. I don't like the way it looks. I don't like the way it looks because it puts the young person in a position where, if I don't like the way I'm being coached here, I'll go here. If I don't like the way I'm doing this, I'll do that. But, that's my old fuddy-duddy thinking.
Well, I don't think it's fuddy-duddy. To be honest with you, I think it's what's fair for somebody like Mooney if he has graduated. Certainly also his coach had left South Dakota and he winds up at Texas Tech. He's got an opportunity to win a championship. And if we're doing stuff that's supposed to be right for kids and putting them in positions to succeed, and there's just more and more of a conversation these days about how players need more freedom of movement as if they were professionals and they're not being paid at all. I'm wondering where you stand on that subject.
I disagree with that. They are being paid. Education has a value. And I hate to hear people say that they're not being paid without giving a formula as to how you would pay them. I was talking about when you mentioned the thing with Mooney, if a guy graduates from school and still has eligibility, I'm in total support of him doing that. But I'm not necessarily sure how I feel about somebody who every year before they have graduated is permitted to go to another school. That's where I have a problem, Rich.
John Thompson here on the Rich Eisen Show. What was your thoughts during the tournament, since the only time I've been fortunate to have a chance to chat with you, where Tom Izzo was on the griddle a little bit for the way he was coaching Aaron Henry? What were your thoughts when you saw that and the conversation that surrounded it?
I think, and you've been around this stuff and in this business, a lot of times people interpret things totally different from what the two parties who are involved interpreted. From a perception standpoint, sometimes the things that I've done have not been things that people were capable of defining what I was doing. And you got to understand one thing, too. People refer to players, Rich, as you know, they refer to players as if we're talking about kids. These players are not going to let you do but so much to them in most instances that they have not permitted you to do based on knowing what you're doing. Tom Izzo is a hell of a coach. Tom Izzo has had respect to the players that he has. But when you see that out of the context of your knowledge of what's going on, you tend to look at it and say, oh, isn't that terrible? Isn't that terrible? But there's so many things that are not able to be translated and interpreted with it, for the outside eye when you're coaching. That's why coaches sometimes have closed practices. You've been around this stuff. Mm-hmm. What goes on in practice sometimes that I wouldn't want anybody to see.
Yeah, I had Eisen on the show. It's exactly what he said. I mean, almost word for word there. Who was the player that you needed to, or you realized needed the hardest coaching, the toughest love in order to bring their game to the fore, Coach?
Well, I can't think of one particular player, but I do know that you have to make an assessment of those who can deal with various aspects of your emotions. Because the objective is to get him to perform and to get him to realize his abilities. You don't treat everybody. Worst thing in the world is when I hear a dumb coach talk, he says, I treat everybody the same way. In life, we don't treat. In administration, in corporate America, you don't treat everybody the same way. So there were some players that I felt that I could be firmer with. There's some players that I felt that I couldn't be firm, but I also knew my limitations in regards to all of those things. There's some kids you just crush if you're very strong and verbal with, but that as a coach. I mean, that you could get on this guy stronger than you can the other guy. But as far as going too far, what's too far, and the player is not going to permit you. These aren't little sixth grade kids. These guys are grown men. They're not going to let you go but so far with them.
What do you think of when you see Patrick Ewing in your spot, in your role, succeeding you as coach of Georgetown? What goes through your mind when you see that?
I think he's a damn fool for wanting to do it.
Why is that?
Who with good sense would want to coach? Other than us crazy people.
I guess that's what it takes, right?
Just because of the things we're talking about. That. And being around this stuff. I mean, it's so many ups and downs, and I enjoyed it. And, I love seeing him in the position. I think he's doing a great job. More importantly, I'm glad he got the opportunity, after paying his dues and being so many times under a situation where he's been assistant coach. He didn't try to inherit it because of his ability. He went out. Patrick went out and tutored under several good coaches to take the profession. So I'm very happy that he got the opportunity to show that he knew what he was doing.
Last couple minutes with John Thompson. Let's get to tonight. What happens tonight, in your estimation, between these two teams?
Oh, boy. That's the question. Just based on how the tournament's going, it's been great and been very unpredictable. But, I've been excited in watching Texas Tech because I had no idea of whatsoever the degree of defense they play. I think the thing that they're so exceptional about them, most people define defense based on the team concept, which is what it should be. But individually in positions, they have people who can play great individual defense. Virginia is going to force them to play the whole possession defensively because they don't take bad shots and they work the clock down. Virginia's a good defensive team, but it's hard for me to say. I think whoever adjusts to the atmosphere, which is important, it doesn't take the whole game to adjust to it, but anybody who says you don't have the adrenaline flowing differently in one of the most important games of your career is just telling a lie. And I don't care how many times you've been there. When you go there, you know that this is a significant game, but you notice how I have avoided answering your question.
I did see that. I did hear that. So let me try and get at it one other way. If you could choose one player, you're coaching this game, or you're just creating a team from this pool of players from tonight, who's the player you pick? Who's the best one? Who's the number one draft choice, if you will, from this team that you would want to play for you?
That's a hard one. I'll avoid that question, too. Because that's a helpful question. I never thought about that. That way, because of both of these teams being so bent on playing as a team, so good as is playing on the team? I don't know the answer to that. I have to think about that one. Can we talk after it's over?
Okay, John. Okay, I mean, you got Culver, you got Jerome, you got Hunter, you got all those guys. It could be any of them.
No, it could be any of them, and I don't know what I have on the team to determine who I would want. Now, if you ask me that about Mr. Williamson, it's very easy for me to pick it out because he's got such a unique talent that he brings to the game.
Right.
You're not going to get me in that situation. I don't know.
Who does it? So then you open that door. I'm sorry if I got to walk through it. Who does Zion remind you of that you've seen coached against?
Nobody that I've seen play before, and I mean it this way. I don't mean he's the best player that I've ever seen, because I think that's a terrible burden to put on a young guy. But but his talent skills. I mean, his quickness, his size, his body size, and his intelligence in playing. I have not looked at anybody that I think at this stage of their career demonstrated those individual talents that he's had. Most of the time, and this, that a person doesn't need to possess the variety of skills that he has. You look at a guy who's played the game, if I go back to ancient history with Bill Russell, he had one skill that could dominate the game. He had more than one skill in terms of his ability, but the dominant thing was his defense. So it doesn't necessarily mean that if you have a variety of skills, as this young man Williamson has, that you're going to be the best player that ever lived. But he's special. I mean, I just was very excited to watch him play. You got a guy that's running out on the perimeter blocking shots. Most people block shots of other people's players, not the player that they are guarding. And he plays hard. He competes. He can handle the ball. I've never seen that body type do what this young man has done. And he can entertain. There's some players that can play well and don't entertain. This boy plays well and also is a very pleasing and entertaining player to watch.
He sure is. It was exhilarating to see him in the tournament, and I look forward to seeing him at the next level. I always enjoy our chats, Coach. Thanks for the time. Really appreciate it.
Okay, buddy. Thank you. I'm still looking for that player, though, who I think I'd pick.
Well, let's just, you have some more time before tip, and if you change your mind, you come up with one, you just let me know. You just let me know. You just let me know.
Okay, buddy.
Okay.
You take care.
You too. That's Coach John Thompson of Westwood One Radio tonight, right here on The Rich Eisen Show.
For more of The Rich Eisen Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV for free on BR Live or download The Rich Eisen Show app.